Hi there. Welcome back to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor. I'm Paulina Cossette, and today I have 4 tips to share with you if you're thinking about becoming an editor and you just want to dip your toes in the water and see if you like it or not. If you are faculty at a college, if you are a graduate student who's approaching defending your dissertation, maybe you're a high school teacher in K through 12, or maybe you are working in higher ed in some other position. Either way, the spring semester and this time of year is the time that we start to think about what our plans are for the future. We've just had a long fall semester. We've had a winter break that's probably too short. And now in the spring, we're starting to think about plans for next year, for teaching courses in the fall, what you're going to do over the summer, whether or not you're applying for tenure or sabbatical or something else that's coming up. And I think the spring, because of all this, is a great time for you to start considering alternative paths. If you are thinking about potentially leaving academia or starting a side hustle as an editor or a coach, this episode is going to be really helpful for you because it gives you 4 ideas for how you can dip your toes in the water of editing and see if you like it, right? They're very low risk. Most of them are very discreet, and so other people don't have to know that you're thinking about this path. And you can give it a try while you're teaching. It's very part-time, very few hours required. So listen to the episode, subscribe on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Give me a review if you find it helpful, and definitely share it with any other friends who you think are considering leaving and maybe going into editing or coaching. Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor, the podcast. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. In 2019, I was a political science professor who was fed up with the stress and hostility of academia, not to mention the low pay. I left my tenure-track job and went from barely surviving to thriving as a freelance academic editor. Today, I own Acadia Editing Services, an editing and coaching business that brings in 6 figures a year. In this podcast, I'll discuss the challenges of academia, what academic editing involves, and what life as a freelancer looks like. If you're willing to jump outside your comfort zone, it is possible to find joy, true flexibility, and a profitable and rewarding career as an academic editor. Thanks for listening. So as I mentioned in the introduction to this episode, the spring semester is a great time for you to start thinking about your potential path going forward, either out of academia completely or maybe in the form of starting a side hustle as an editor or as a coach. And I think there are a few reasons that this is a great time, and why freelance editing and coaching is very easy to try out during the spring semester. First, many people are very hesitant to leave academia, understandably. I definitely had a lot of anxiety and went through a very torturous process of trying to figure out if that was the right decision. Even though I was miserable, it was very hard and it felt like failure to think about leaving academia and this career that I had worked so hard for. And we can get into all those details in another episode, but being able to follow the tips that I'm going to give you today in this episode, they are ways for you to start moving towards this different identity and this different potential career path. And they don't require you to resign yet if you don't want to or you're not ready. They don't require a lot of extra time outside of your current job because I know that that time probably doesn't exist. And it's going to let you take the next few months of this semester and perhaps even into the summer to try things out, to dip your toes in the water, to see if you even like editing and whether or not it's going to fit into your life before you decide to resign and to make that big commitment, which I know is a really tough choice. So follow these steps that I'm going to share with you, and I think it's going to be really helpful to get the wheels turning and help you see what is possible for you in a life outside of academia or even just as a side hustle. So step one is to get your name on what I call ETD lists. ETD stands for Electronic Thesis and Dissertation Office. And if you recall back to when you were writing your thesis or dissertation, not only did you have to get the document approved by your committee in terms of your substantive argument and all of that, but you also had to get it approved by the formatting office at your university. And so maybe you had to format it to APA style or to particular university guidelines. And it was this formatting or ETD office that had to review the text to make sure that everything looked good and that it was in line with the requirements for publishing it with a ProQuest or whatever the company is at your school. And so a lot of these offices, because they know how difficult it can be for graduate students to complete these requirements, they include a list of editors on their website or inside their private login. There's a gated area where grad students can log in to get the editing documents and policies and all of that. And sometimes they'll include in there a list of editors. And so what I'd like you to do, just to try this out, and by getting your name on these lists, you're not committing yourself to editing anything. It's just an initial step that you can take to try things out and get started. Contact several of these offices. Maybe you want to start with your university where you work now. Maybe you want to start with the universities you attended as an undergrad or as a graduate student. A lot of schools will require that you have some kind of connection to them to be listed on their list of editors. Or maybe you just want to try at random. Look up major universities where you know that they have big graduate programs in the subfields that you specialize in. Write to them, find the support at whatever the university is, or formatting at whatever the university is.edu email address. Write them, tell them that you're an academic editor and a professor and that you'd like to be added to their list of editors. Most of them are very kind. They'll get back to you. They'll ask for your information and a short bio, maybe a photograph or something, and they'll add you to the list. And that's really as simple as it is. When dissertation season rolls around, which of course is coming up very quickly at the end of the spring semester, graduate students will likely start contacting you and asking you for a quote to edit or format their dissertation. This is great because you can decide whether or not you want to take the job. If you don't have time, you just say, sorry, I don't have time right now. But it's some of the pros here are that the schedule is very flexible because you can turn down work if you don't have time. It's very low risk because you're not putting yourself out there in a public way. You are just accepting work from some random graduate student out in the world. And you are taking the time to learn how to do the formatting, to learn how to do the editing, to see what it feels like to work in this kind of role as an editor. And it's also discreet. And so if you are not wanting to share with people in your department or college that you are thinking about leaving academia, they don't have to know, right? Of course, the disclaimer on all of this is that you should check your university policies and see if you are allowed to take on a side hustle like this. But sending your name to these universities, it is very unlikely that anyone in your program is going to find out that you're doing this. And so you can pursue this option without making a huge public announcement that you're trying to become an editor or considering leaving academia. The cons of this step is that you have to format dissertations, which I will admit is not the most fun type of editing. Formatting when you're just starting out can be quite difficult. Most of us in our lives as authors and co-authors and professors, we are not creating tables of contents and styling our headings and all of that. But with that said, once you learn this process and you do a few of these, it gets much, much easier and you can work much, much faster. So the downside is there is a bit of a learning curve when you're starting out. But again, it's a way for you to try this out and see if you might like doing this kind of work in the long term or even full time. Another con to this is that, of course, graduate students don't have huge budgets. And so you may charge in the realm of 2 to 3 cents a word. I'm using US currencies here. And you would charge them for any text that they want edited. So, for example, if you don't need to edit the appendix of a dissertation, you would just omit that from the word count, and you wouldn't charge them because you're not editing that text. So 2 to 3 cents a word is on the lower end of pay rates for academic editors, but it's a really great starting point. And like I said, it's a great way for you to dip your toe in and try this out and see if you even like the work. Step 2 for getting started is to try applying to some editing agencies. First, what is an editing agency? Well, there are many companies out there. A lot of them are associated with publishers like Taylor and Francis or Cambridge. Others are just independent companies like Scribendi or Editage or Edanz, E-D-A-N-Z. I'll put some of these links in the show notes so you can see. Basically, they're companies that get scholars from around the world to submit their papers to the company's website. And then the company hires freelancers like you to do the copy edits on the papers or documents. Usually they're journal articles, but often they can also be dissertations or books. And they pay you as the freelancer to edit the text and return it to the company, who then returns it to the client. And these are a great option for you to try out editing because, again, it's very low risk. It's totally discreet. The company is not going to announce to your employer that you are doing this editing work on the side. Nobody but you has to know. You don't have to do any kind of marketing, right? If you get hired by one of these companies, they send you the work directly. They liaise with the clients. They handle the customer service. And so it's all very low risk, very discreet. And a huge benefit is that these companies understand that you may be doing something else for your full-time job, like being a professor. And so you tell them how much time you have, how many articles you can take on, and usually they're very willing to work with you with your schedule. When you contact them, they will likely ask you for a one-page resume. I delve into these points much more deeply in my course and group coaching program called Becoming an Academic Editor. And we go over a one-page resume template. But the key point here is that you do not want to focus on your teaching or academic experience per se. You definitely want to keep the resume to one page, and you want to translate all of the work that you've done as a professor or as a teacher into editing language. So if you were a co-author on a paper, you would emphasize that you have this publishing experience. You've published X number of articles in peer-reviewed journals. If you have graded essays or research papers in your courses that you assign to students, you would say that you've supervised student research and given feedback and edited their papers. We often, as academics, don't think of this work as editing, but it really is the same thing. And so not only do you have the skills already to become an academic editor, but you just need to tweak the language a bit when you put it on this resume so that the editing agency can take a quick cursory look to see, okay, they have experience with editing and research. They understand what academic publishing is supposed to look like. Next, we're going to send them an editing test to test out their skills. And so most of these companies will do just that. They look over your resume. They make sure that it's very clean, that there are no typos, that you have some kind of academic background, and then they send you the editing test. This is usually an excerpt from a research paper or a book chapter or something like that that has a lot of mistakes in it. And it shouldn't be more than a couple of pages. Maybe they'll send you a handful of references to check that you know how to edit the citation style for those references. But it shouldn't be more than a few pages, and it's just to see how you do, to see what your editing skills are. So take your time, work very carefully, and return it to them. And if you get hired, then you're on your way. They will send you articles according to the schedule that you told them, how often you're available. You edit them, you return them to the agency. And again, this is a great way for you to try this out in your little bit of free time that you have, and see if you like it. Step 3 in this process is setting up a part of your profile on LinkedIn to show that you are starting to do work as an academic editor. Now, how extensively you want to change your profile is up to you and depends on your circumstances. If you are deciding to do editing full time, and if you're leaving academia, say, I would completely revamp your profile and have the sole focus be on your academic editing work. Of course, you would keep the previous teaching jobs that you held, your education, all of those things. But at the top of the profile and in the photo banner that sits at the top of your page and all of those kinds of key highlighted elements, you'll want them to focus on your new role as an academic editor. If you are staying in academia and you're just wanting to kind of subtly note that you are taking on editing clients, you might just add a line as, say, a new job or something like that, where you say that you are working as an academic editor. If you have a website, you could include a link to the website, and you might describe briefly the types of articles and other documents that you edit. When you are designing parts of this profile, you want to make sure that you are focusing on how you help clients. So for instance, in the paragraph at the top of your LinkedIn page where you give a little bit of about you, or the biography section, if you are all in on editing, you're going to want to not talk about your own expertise and publishing record and all of those things. Instead, you want to focus on how you're helping clients. So do you save them time? Do you free up their schedule so that they have more time to spend with their family? Are you reducing their stress? Are you taking care of all the little formatting details so that they can publish faster and get tenure? However you frame this is going to depend on the types of clients that you want to work with. But again, all the focus should be on the clients and how you help them solve their problems, because that's what they care about the most. Of course, they're going to go down and look at your education and your publishing experience and all of that. But primarily in their mind is, I'm suffering with this problem and I need help. How can this person help me solve my problem? Next, once you've spruced up your LinkedIn profile, you're going to want to start sending connection requests and direct messages to either people who are already in your network or random people who you think might need an editor. So for instance, if you are focused on working with scholars who are writing a book, you might think about the different subfields or areas where you want to focus and where you have expertise, and send connection requests to professors who are working in those areas. Again, they can be people you know. They can be people who are, say, a second degree connection to you. Maybe they know you know of them through someone else. Or whatever it is that you're comfortable with and the level of discretion and privacy that you want to maintain as you're dipping your toes in this water. You can also send some direct messages to people if you like. Maybe find people who are already they're already connected to you, they're already in your network. Send them a DM and say, hey, I'm starting to pick up some editing work. I was wondering if you have any journal articles that have been sitting on your desk that I can help you wrap up so you can get them submitted. Or, hey, I know you're working on getting tenure. Maybe I can help you turn your dissertation into your book. Whatever it is that you're comfortable with, that you want to work on with those types of projects, just send people a message. And I put on the slide, if you're watching on YouTube, I have the pros and cons listed here. And of course, the pros are that it allows for flexible scheduling. You can take on as many or as few projects as you want. Again, it can be very discreet because you're not making a public announcement about what you're doing. You're just kind of privately noting on your profile and sending messages to people. And you can get higher pay. So I would start out as a beginning editor around 3 to 4 cents per word, but it's up to you. I also noted that a con is that you have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. But I don't want you to think of this as a con. I want you to think of this as actually an area for growth. Something that I've learned a lot in business is that if you are going to be successful, there are certain things that you have to do. And networking and connecting with people is one of those things. I know that it can feel very awkward. I know that we are all naturally have a fear of rejection. But one of my favorite people that I follow in online business, Amy Porterfield, she has a famous quote that she repeats often where she says, "You have to learn to love what it takes to get what you want." So if you are the kind of person who is uncomfortable sending a DM to somebody saying, "Hey, I'm becoming an editor. Do you have any projects for me to work on?" A little bit of tough love here is that you have to get used to it. You have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I promise you, the more you do it, the better you'll get, the easier it will get. And another great point of advice that I've heard is that you should assume that people want to hear from you. You should assume that these people need help and want your help. And quite frankly, they'll probably be relieved to hear from you and to know that there is someone out there who can help lighten their load and ease this burden for them. So if this is an area that's particularly challenging for you, definitely try to reframe your thoughts on this and just give it a try. And I promise you that it will pay off in the long term. All right, step 4 in the 4 steps to take to figure out if editing is right for you is to work your network. So this is very similar to what we just talked about with LinkedIn, but it is encouraging you to just connect with colleagues, other people at your institution, if you're comfortable with that, maybe people that you went to graduate school with, maybe former advisors or professors that you worked with in graduate school. Whatever the case is for you, reach out to these people, send an email to each one, and throw the idea out there. Say, "Hey, I'm thinking about becoming an editor, and I was wondering if you have a paper I could practice on." If you want to, you could even do a couple of these projects for free just to get practice and see how you like it, if that feels better for you. I caution you against doing that too often because I do believe that you should be paid for your labor. But if that's the way that you feel comfortable starting, I'd say go for it. So send a few emails to the people who you think will be most receptive to this and see how they respond. Chances are they're going to be very supportive because, let's be honest, everybody in academia is overworked and is stressed out and needs help. And if you are comfortable opening up to these people and say, "Look, I need to make some extra money," or, "I'm really not happy and I'm pursuing this as a possible future career," or even if you leave all that out and just say, "Hey, I'm thinking of becoming an editor or picking up some editing work," I think they're going to be really supportive. And this is a great way, again, to practice connecting with people. You can keep it very casual. Again, as I said at the beginning, you want to check your university policies to make sure that it is okay for you to take on a side hustle like this. But all in all, I think this is a great way to get your first projects. Again, it's very low risk. It's very flexible. You only take on the projects that you have time for. And you can charge a bit more than you would, say, with an editing agency. So again, you'd be in like the 3 to 4 cents a word range to start. The disadvantage, of course, if you're sending emails to people at your own institution, is this becomes a little bit more public. People may talk. There's the chance that your department chair or your provost or whoever will find out about it. So again, just think very carefully about that as you move forward. So we have discussed today 4 steps that you can take in becoming an academic editor, or at least trying it out to see if that's something that you're interested in. And I think that all of these steps can apply to coaching as well. If you're thinking about becoming a writing coach or a publishing coach, or somebody who helps people with time management, but you could apply all these steps to connect with people and see if they're looking for coaching help. If you are more certain of your future direction and you're ready to dive in to pursuing an editing career, I teach a digital course and 12-week group coaching program called Becoming an Academic Editor. And in that course, you get lifetime access to almost 3 hours of videos, tons of resources, resume templates, invoice, contract templates, pretty much everything that you need to start a new editing or coaching business. And we also have 12-week group coaching cohorts. We're starting one this week at the start of January. Our next one will be beginning in March, and that one is filling right now. And so if this is something that you think you'd be interested in and you're ready to get started, please go to my website, acadiaediting.com/become-an-editor. As I mentioned at the start of this episode, the spring semester is a great time for you to reevaluate your needs and what you want out of life. And if you're feeling burnt out and if you're feeling exhausted and you feel like you want to make a change, give these 4 steps a try. See if you like editing. See if it excites you, if you think that it's fun, if the idea of working from home, having a completely flexible schedule, being able to have weekends and nights off, if all of that sounds good to you, then this might be a great opportunity for you to jump into our March cohort, learn the ropes, and then get started full-time editing or coaching this summer. So if you have any questions, please reach out via email. It's paulina@acadiaediting.com. And I'm always happy to chat. So thanks for joining me. If you're unhappy in academia and you think you might be a good editor or writing coach, check out my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. This digital course is paired with a 12-week group coaching program to support you through your decision to leave academia or not, and to start building a profitable and rewarding academic editing business. Learn more by going to acadiaediting.com/become-an-editor. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.